Hi, my name is Jonathan Lewis. I'm from Florida, and I am going to be sharing my testimony today. Everything started back probably some years ago. I was actually preparing for a tryout for a team out in Indiana, and through the process of going and preparing, I kept God first. I was actually living on Campus Town right over by Chamberlain and Welch, where if you're from the Ames area and you go to school here, you know that there's a lot of partying. There's clubs every weekend. There's club through the week. So there was plenty of opportunity for me to go out and be out in the world, but I wasn't. I spent a lot of time just focusing on my craft and focusing on God and allowing God to just guide my path. And so because of that and having my focus on God, He was able to give me the things that I was desiring. I went out to go try out for a team and made the 50-man camp. And now this had been years of not playing football and jumping back into football with guys that had been playing, within the previous year. And so God had just been blessing me to be able to have the ability to play at a high level and to be able to experience playing for a professional team. And I ended up signing my first professional contract. Now, being there, things started to get good. It was fun, exciting, and while I was in practice, I was still focusing on God. I was still praying. I wasn't afraid who saw me to pray. I would pray before the practice, take a knee at practice and pray before we got started. On my calendar, I had God speed, God timing. It was all about God. And because of that, God allowed me to see all of the things that I was able to receive and desire. But through that process, I tended to fall off. I kind of almost forgot of who God was and what He had done for me. And so because of that, He allowed for everything to just go straight downhill. I went from being at football practice one day to being back in Michigan where my family was residing at the time and working for a landscaping company, or really I didn't even have a job right yet. I didn't even know what I was doing with my own life. I was just lost. And so during that time, I lost my grandmother, and then the girl that I was dating at the time decided to break up with me. And so I was having a hard time in life right at that moment, just lost, did not know what to do. I didn't know who I was. And God blessed me through the midst of it. Even through the midst of my troubles that I was going through, my storm, I still was praying to God every morning, crying on my way to my landscaping job, back from the landscaping job, crying because all of these things just happened at one time. And so God gave me a job, and then He gave me the opportunity to work it. And then I had a lady that reached out to me. God had gave her a message and told her that the environment that I was in at the time, that's not where He had intended it for me to be. And at that moment of time, I didn't see that I wasn't going to be leaving anytime soon. And so God is just crazy how He just does things. And He allowed me to end up back in Iowa. At the moment of time, I'm in Iowa, didn't have a vehicle, didn't have a job. I ended up working at Hickory Park. I had dropped from being a football player on a professional team to being at Hickory Park. And so from there, I was working as a prep, just prepping food for the day, and then that would be my job. And at that time, I was trying to work towards getting a new apartment, and then just move back up from there. In the midst of that, God allowed Kelly to come into my life, and we were seeing each other at the time. And at the time, me and her were supposed to go on a date, and I ended up not showing up at the date simply because I didn't have a place to stay. At the time, I actually was living in the back of my van, or either I was staying at a friend's house because the conditions were just that bad for me. And so if you were to ask me all of the things I have now, I couldn't tell you that I would have what I have now, simply because God had to get my attention again. God had to show me that, hey, you cannot do it without me. And I am thankful that I don't play football now, because I got to experience and see what God truly wanted me to be and who I was designed and who He created me to be. And so all of that to say the platform and the journey that God took me through was the growth for what he needed me to do today. And that's be able to be a father, be a husband to my family, but then also through the business he has given me to be able to teach other young athletes that when they go into sports, it's not about their physical ability, it's not about who they are, but it's about allowing God to shine through them in the platform God has given them. In my journey of getting to where I'm at now, God has allowed me to come encounter with many of athletes, many of people seeking to have better health, and through the process of helping them seek better health, help them find their identity and who they are and who Christ intended them to be, to have confidence in themselves, to go out and perform their journey, their goals, their dreams, and continue on. So because of my journey, I'm able to pour back into young people who are playing sports and help them understand that, hey, you can do even more with God if you allow God to come into what you're doing. God wants to be in our life. God wants to help us navigate our path, but he gives us the option of whether we want him to be there or not. And I'm here to tell you today that when you allow God to step through, he will open up the window wider than you ever can open it, and he can extend the opportunity and the ability to do so more than what you can do for yourself. I experienced it in first sight of having the ability, after 6 years of not playing football, stepping out on that field and being able to perform at a level with guys that just came out of the NFL or came out of the Canadian League that were playing at a high level. And God blessed me to have the physical ability to do so. But because I lost sight of him, he had to strip it away in order for me to see him again. And so I'm here to tell you today, whatever you're doing, whatever you have a desire to do, you have to put God into it. Put God into it first, and I promise you, it'll grow like a flower. Over time, it'll blossom and be at its full strength. But don't forget who gives you your sunlight and gives you your rain for you to grow. God gives us all of those things. He gives us the experiences to be prepared to do what he has called us to do, but then also the connections that he gives us allows us to grow and become the person that we're supposed to be for other people today. So don't forget, keep God focused in, and stay blessed. Yeah, definitely. I would say during football, when I was playing football, I would say God was definitely by my side because I didn't have all of the equipment. I didn't have a trainer myself to help me excel and prepare. Through the process of training, I managed to have a lot of minor injuries because of overtraining, but still through the course of it, I trusted God when that date came. And this right here is definitely part of the testimony of, when I knew God was definitely there for me, is because when I went to go try out at the camp, our first camp for trials, it was a misty, rainy day. It was cool outside, and I ended up tweaking my hamstring. And at that time, I felt discouraged. I felt like, man, now I can't perform. I'm not going to be able to go out and show that I'm capable of playing. And so I reached out to my girlfriend at the time, and I told her, hey, I pulled my hamstring. I plan on probably returning back to the Airbnb that we were staying at. And so she told me, no, we came this far for you to have the opportunity to play. And so I stayed out there, and then I decided that, hey, I'm going to go talk to the coach and tell him that, hey, I pulled my hamstring, but I'm going to stay and do anything that you want me to try to do. And so I did stay, and through the process, I watched all of them go by drills. Drill after drill just goes by, and I didn't perform because I just wasn't capable of doing it at the time. And so we got to one-on-ones, and so I decided out of all of the drills to do that I was going to compete against other players and guarding them. And in the midst of competing in the one-on-ones, God gave me the ability to be able to cover running backs and wide receivers coming off of the offensive end. And I was able to lock them in and have a good defensive play. And because of that, I ended up leaving and coming back to Ames and ended up getting a notification saying that we're going to invite you to camp for our 50-man camp. And so nothing but God, leaning on God, because I wasn't physically capable of doing it, and God allowed me to be able to perform even under the circumstances of being injured. Well, I would say it actually started. It started before I even got out to camp, because I had already had my focus on God, and had been praying about, this particular time, this event. And so when it came to full circle, though, being out there is a different thing versus it not being, you're preparing for it. But when I got out there, and I didn't realize I was going to get injured because I was prepping, but then I realized that, hey, God got me here, and God is the one that's going to help me finish it. And so when I experienced my injury, I would say I felt the injury. I felt it there. But at the same time, I guess I did not want to just leave and not, let anybody know that I was leaving. So I think it was probably just God really just guiding my steps. And that came from previous prayer that already happened, because he already knew what he had for me in this situation. I just needed to trust him in the process. Even with being injured, I needed to trust that he was going to lead me through and allow me to have success. And so I would say after feeling the injury, it was more of the fact of knowing that, okay, no matter what, I'm going to stay out here. I'm going to make myself be present. And if I'm called upon to do something, I'm going to try my best to do it. And I think in the midst of doing that and trusting God and knowing that God was going to give it to me, he was able to bless me to just be able to perform, because I only did 2 competitions of one-on-one, and both of the competitions I did well in, and God allowed me to succeed in them. And so right then and there, I knew when I trusted God that to help me go through with the injury, I was going to succeed. So I would say with my experiences of, being able to have the opportunity of playing professional ball, and then, forgetting who God was and what he had given me and how he stripped it away, and how I kind of went to ground zero, not being a football player anymore, but, ended up becoming a landscaper and then becoming a prep at a restaurant. I would say the beauty of it all is that what I didn't know then and what I know now is the fact that sometimes God takes us through things, and it may be what we want to do, and there may be things in what we want to do that necessarily we don't want to do, and then there may be things that we just don't want to do, but it's all for the purpose of us growing. And so whatever that trial may be, it's like the storm, it won't last forever. And so what I say that you could take from it is the fact of what is God wanting me to see in this time right now? I would say for myself, when I went to ground zero, what I needed to learn was that I couldn't do things without God. Because I was physically capable, I was an athlete, I felt like, there was a lot of things I could do and not need help with it. But then I began to realize that in order for God to send me in the right path or take the right step, I needed to be able to rely on him and give him my all. And so even in the midst of falling down and coming back up, I had to trust God with the process of helping me get an apartment, helping me be able to get back on my feet, helping me to be able to just be more grounded spiritually. And so I would say the big part of it is that I started to rely on him for everything, even the small to big. And with the small, he was able to trust me with the small, so he continued to give me more. And so the big thing is that when you're in those storms, you definitely want to make sure that you are giving your all to God, even if it looks like you're not going to succeed. You want to believe in him. You want to believe in everything that he possibly could do for you. And so for me, it was more of being a more spiritual grounded that I needed to have in order for me to take the next step forward, because I probably would wind back up in the same place. And so I would say what helped me come out of that storm is the fact of relying on God again and understanding that I can't do anything without God, and that, you know, with relying on Him, the storms that I'm in now don't last forever. So